There are more agentic AI tools out right now than anyone could keep track of, and they all promise to go off and do the work for you instead of just answering questions. So I put the popular ones through real tasks to find out which ones actually deliver. And the ones that held up all shared one thing almost nobody talks about, and it's the reason the famous ones tend to stop delivering the second you start relying on them. The first tool has gotten massively popular over the last few months, to the point where it's one of the most installed agents out there, and it's called OpenClaw. You might recognize it under an older name because it started out as ClaudeBot, then became MoltBot, before finally landing on OpenClaw. What makes it work for so many people is that it removes the hardest part of using an agent, since there's no dashboard to learn and no app to open. You just message it from somewhere you already are, like WhatsApp or Telegram, and it does the job and texts you back. So I set mine up, and right away I hit that catch. The first version was running on my own laptop, and the moment it went to sleep, I couldn't reach the agent at all, which defeats the whole point of something that's meant to work for you on its own. The usual fix is buying a machine to leave on all the time, like a Mac Mini, but that's around $600 just to keep one assistant running. So I set it up on a Hostinger VPS instead, which is just a small computer in the cloud that stays on 24/7, so the agent keeps running whether my laptop is on or not. And every agent in this video runs on Hostinger, because they have a one-click template for each one, which makes them really simple to use with no complicated setup to work through. I'm running all of them on their KVM2 plan, which is a cloud server with 2 processor cores, 8 GB of memory, and 80 GB of storage, so it has enough room to keep a few agents going at once without ever paying for a second server. I'll leave a link to all of the agents in the description, and when you go through that link, my code Parker comes already applied on the 12 and 24-month plans, so you get the lowest price on the final amount. OpenClaw is the most installed app they have, so getting it going was just a one-click setup. With that sorted, I told it to go through my inbox and draft replies to anything that is labeled with draft for review. A minute later, it returned with an email that needed a reply, complete with a draft response ready for me to review and send. The reply wasn't just a canned template either. It picked up on the collaboration request, suggested a relevant next step, and drafted a response that fit the context of the conversation. That's the moment the whole idea makes sense, because you're handing off a task and getting finished work back. Then I asked it for 3 direct flights from London to Lisbon next Friday. It opened a browser on its own, searched, and sent me 3 options right there in the chat, with the times laid out, which is the part that makes it feel less like a chatbot and more like an assistant you can text from anywhere. It works the same way across more than 10 apps, and it'll even take a voice note and act on it exactly like a typed message. And when you run it on Hostinger, it comes with AI credits already built in, so you don't even need your own API key to get started. And the link's in the description if you want to follow along. And you'll want to be careful about what you let it access. An assistant that can read your email and act on it is a powerful tool, but it's only as safe as the permissions you give it. One mistake, one miscalculation, and it could send something you didn't mean to send. OpenClaw is the easiest tool here to start with, and for most people it's the right first agent to try, as long as you keep the jobs focused. If you've never run an agent before, this is the one I'd hand you first, because you can get something useful out of it in the first 5 minutes. Where OpenClaw does the tasks you hand it, the next tool actually builds things from scratch. This next one is huge with developers, and it's called Claude Code. For years, building even a simple tool meant writing every line of it yourself, and Claude Code changes that for anyone doing technical work. It runs in your terminal, and you describe what you want in plain English, and it plans the whole thing out, writes the actual code, runs it, and fixes its own mistakes until it works. To put it to work, I'll paste in a prompt telling it to build a simple expense tracker app from scratch. It laid out a plan, wrote the code, made changes when the app needed improvement, and then handed me a working tool, all without me typing a single line of code. I could add an expense, watch the total update instantly, filter the list by category, move around the app smoothly, and it ran exactly like something I'd have paid a developer to put together. When I asked it to add a feature afterward, it slotted that in without breaking what was already there, which is the part that usually goes wrong when you do it by hand. This is the one that actually builds things for you, so instead of getting advice on how to make something, you watch the finished version come together right in front of you. It even shows you its full plan before it changes anything, so you approve the approach first instead of letting it run unchecked. Where it pulls ahead is on the hard, messy problems that other tools give up on, because that is where it still finishes the job. The downside is everything that isn't code, since it won't read your inbox or run on a schedule for you, and you need a paid Claude subscription to use it at all. It also gets expensive if you lean on it all day, with the heaviest users spending well over $100 a month, and you'll run into usage limits if you keep it busy for hours. And $100 a month sounds steep until you price out what building anything normally costs, because this tracker would have run me a few hundred on a freelance site and taken a week to come back. So if you build software, it's the most capable tool on this entire list. And if you don't, it honestly isn't the one for you. One agent on one job gets you surprisingly far, but some work is too big for that, and that's exactly what the next tool is built around. Up to now, every tool here has been a single agent doing one thing, but this next one runs a whole team of them at once, and it's called Paperclip. Instead of one assistant, you set up several agents, each with its own role, its own goal, and even its own spending limit, and they work together to get bigger jobs done. You give each each one a title and a spot in the chain so the work passes from one to the next, and you plug in your own keys from Claude, GPT, or Gemini to power them, which means you pay the model providers directly with no markup in between. I booted up Paperclip up on Hostinger the same way, then set up 3 agents and handed the team a single goal. I'll paste in the brief. The researcher pulled the facts together, the writer shaped them into a draft, and the reviewer tightened it up and checked the claims until a finished article showed up in my dashboard. I read it over and it held together, with the claims checked and the sources noted, at a level I could have published as is. I never touched it once the goal was set, and watching the work move from one agent to the next, each one picking up where the last left off, felt a lot closer to managing a team than using a tool. This is the one you'd use when a job has several steps that depend on each other, like pulling together a market report, handling a batch of customer requests, or running an outreach campaign where one agent finds the leads and another writes the messages. Watching the agents hand work off to each other and finish a job together is what makes Paperclip worth it, because it opens up work that's simply too big for one agent to handle on its own. It keeps a record of what every agent did and why, so you can trace any decision back through the team, and you can set a spending cap on each one, so it warns you the moment an agent hits 80% of its budget and pauses it completely at 100. Its real strength is the work that's too big for a single agent, with the structure and the cost control built right in. The catch is the setup, because it's the most involved tool here to get running, and without tight instructions, the agents can go back and forth and run up a bill, which is exactly why that budget warning exists. So Paperclip is worth it when you need several agents working together, and total overkill if all you want is a personal assistant. All 3 of those tools are impressive, but there's one more and it does something none of these 3 can, which is the reason I trust an agent with work that actually matters. That tool is Hermes, and the thing it does that none of the others can is actually learn, so it gets better the longer you run it. Every one of these tools runs on a server, so they're all online all the time, and that's not the part that makes Hermes stand out. It was built by Noose Research, and the learning comes down to 2 things. The first is memory, because it remembers you from one conversation to the next, so you can tell it once how you like your summaries written or which projects you care about, and every answer after that comes back already shaped around you. The second is that it improves itself, turning the tasks you repeat into its own reusable skills, so it gets sharper every week instead of doing the same thing forever. The first time I asked it to put together a research roundup, it took a few back and forth tries to get right, but by the 3rd time it had saved those steps as a skill of its own and ran the whole thing in one go. To see it in action, I set it up on Hostinger in a couple of minutes and handed it a recurring job through its built-in scheduler. The job itself was nothing special, a short AI news summary sent to my chat every morning. The part that mattered came later, because after a couple of weeks, it had tightened the format on its own and started leading with the topics I actually opened, without me ever telling it to. The others would send the exact same thing on day 50 as they did on day 1, but Hermes reshapes itself around how you actually use it. And I didn't expect how different that feels day to day, because tools usually train you to work around their habits, and this is the first one I've used that goes the other way and adjusts to mine. That sounds small until you've used a tool that does it, and then it's hard to go back. So the version running a month from now is sharper than the one you set up today, which is the opposite of how every other tool on this list ages. The one thing to watch is that those self-made skills shouldn't be trusted blindly, since an agent writing its own instructions deserves a quick look before it runs them for real, and you're the one responsible for the server it runs on. Everything else is upside, because it's free and open source, with more than 181,000 developers backing it on GitHub in just a few months. So the only thing you ever pay for is the server, which can be as cheap as $5 a month, plus the AI tokens it uses. It also runs on whatever model you want behind it, from Claude to GPT to open source ones, so you're never locked into one provider. And your memory follows you across platforms, so what you tell it in one chat shows up wherever it picks up next. It plugs into Telegram, Slack, and Discord too, so you can message it like any of the others while it keeps learning in the background. Out of everything I tested, this is the one that actually becomes more useful the longer you keep it, because it's the only one here that natively learns. And the part that stood out most was Hermes getting better on its own the longer I ran it, and the only thing between you and your own agent is a server, and Hostinger sets it up in one click. So grab the link below, pick the one that fits, and you'll be running in 15 minutes. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.